Welcome to the Economic Opportunities and Tourism Committee. My name is Deirdre Bartman and I'm chairperson of this committee. And today we are discussing vote 12 of the Western Cape Adjustments Budget. Members, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping rules quickly. Members, I'm going to just mute everyone quickly at the beginning of the meeting, just so that there are no background noises. Members, if you want to speak in terms of a question or a point of order, or if you're presenting, you're welcome to put your video and your camera on. And please, I just ask that after you are off the floor, that you just please put your mic and your camera off again afterwards. If you would like to raise a question or a point of order, please raise your hand. And I just ask that you please lower your hand afterwards. And if we can just also keep the chat box clear so that we can make sure that any points of orders flagged there or technical assistance are assisted with. And further, just a reminder that the meeting is recorded as well as on YouTube, so the public are able to watch us today. I'm going to welcome members, welcome to the officials, to the procedural officers and technical assistants, as well as to the minister and department and any members of the public that may be part of the meeting. How the meeting will work is I'm going to allow for members to first introduce themselves. Then I'm going to allow for the minister to make some introductory remarks. And then the HOD and the department can jump straight into the presentation. After that, I will allow for questions and answers, and I'll also allow if anyone from the public is with us to also ask after that then. But I will commit to allowing for one round of questions. If there is time, I will allow for a second round of questions, but given that we only have an hour, we're going to play it by ear. Members, please could you introduce yourselves? I'm going to just put my video off just for connectivity reasons. Thank you.
Andrikus van der Westhuizen, member of the committee.
Thank you, Member van der Westhuizen.
Goeiemorgen, voorzitter. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dalen Mitchell.
Morning, Member Mitchell. Anyone else?
Good morning. I'm Nomi Nkondlo, member of the committee.
Welcome, Honorable Nkondlo.
Morning, Chairperson. Once again, Lulama Mvimbi. I'm the alternate member of the committee.
Welcome, Honorable Mvimbi. Okay, if there aren't any other members, I'm going to then jump straight in and allow for the minister to make some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Chairperson. As you say, I'll make some brief introductory remarks and then hand over to the Acting Head of Department, Joe Johnson. As you will see from the special adjustments budget and indeed the presentation, the department takes a net reduction of about 57 million, and that is as a result of a baseline reduction of 72 million, but then additional funding of about 15.5 million rand to support operational costs as a result of COVID-19, further measures in relation to workplace safety, an SMME relief and recovery fund, and then, of course, also to support secondary screening at the George Airport. I have to say, Chairperson, that under the circumstances, I think that the department have adapted well and have really notched up considerable achievements over the last couple of months responding to COVID-19, especially in relation to supporting business, in supporting the further opening of the economy, in supporting workplace safety, and then also supporting national government and entities with systemic challenges, for example, in the Port of Cape Town. Chair, with that through you, I'd like to hand over to the Acting HOD, Joe Johnson.
Thank you, Minister. Ms. Johnson.
Good morning, Chair and honourable members. I have prepared a presentation, but under your guidance, Chair, do you want the team to introduce themselves, or shall I just proceed straight on to the PowerPoint presentation that we have done?
Ms. Johnson, if possible, can the team only introduce themselves at the parts where they are presenting? Given how big the delegation is today, I don't want to waste too much time with introductions.
Okay, fine. All right, so then I'll start sharing and presenting. All right. I think before I start, just to complement what the minister is saying, is that COVID has obviously upended everything globally, and basically upset the way things have done. So I think we've done quite a lot of work around modeling about what COVID-19 is going to mean for our economy. And certainly in terms of just our medium scenario projections, it is showing that in this year alone, our GVA is likely to shrink by 10.4%. That basically means that 54 billion rand is going to be wiped off our provincial economy. And in terms of jobs, we are looking at nearly 170,000 jobs being lost in the provincial economy this year. There will be a recovery that's anticipated next year, but certainly off a really, really low base. So if effectively our economy is in big trouble because of COVID. And I think we are projecting that without intervention, we will only reach break-even point, that is pre-COVID point, in 2024. So I think we're living in really extraordinary times. And I think, as the minister is saying, is that the response of the department has been, I think, so far quite extraordinary, because I think we are quite aware of the fact now, and the budget reflects this, that the priority is on the humanitarian and the health risks. But what we have been doing thus far over the last 4 or 5 months has been trying to mitigate the impact that COVID has had on our economy and on our businesses and on the workers of the province. So what we have done is, as a department, is that we've effectively looked at reducing, as Minister said, our baseline deduction. We've done this in a number of ways. One, we have improved our expenditure efficiencies through cost containment. So that's basically that there have been a number of operational budgets that we have slashed by nearly 4.6 million rand. And that's basically things like, obviously, travel, subsistence, stationery, all of those things have been, and entertainment and catering for meetings have been slashed significantly, partly because on the one hand it wasn't required, but two, also we're anticipating that going forward, and even if and when we return to office, that will minimize these kinds of expenditures quite radically. The second way that we have managed to reduce the baseline is essentially through the prioritization of expenditure. And that is, for example, in terms of some programs and projects, we have either rescheduled it, so we've delayed it, and that's partly because of COVID. So, for example, in the ICANN project, we were supposed to have been doing training at libraries as well as at libraries, at the youth cafes. Those obviously cannot take place. So those have been rescheduled or delayed, and in certain cases, we've managed to reduce some of these particular projects, which generated nearly 2 million rands of over 2 million rands of savings. The third thing is around reducing earmarked allocations. So that is 35 million rand. The bulk of this has come through Westgrow, because obviously they're very much person-to-person type of operations, but they've actually responded in a very novel way. They've done things smarter. So now they're having, for example, digital export missions, doing still basically looking at meeting the APP priorities, but done in using digital technologies. So that has generated 35 million rand. And then we've also done a review of the compensation of employees. So this has been done. At the moment, we're looking at 30 million rand, and obviously there's going to go forward a review of the structures and smarter ways of actually doing things and the implications that may have for our HR and compensation of employees. What we have now is essentially a breakdown of how this baseline reduction was achieved, so that this would then be made available for the wider provincial response to COVID. And as you can see, is the breakdown per program is showing that operational savings is 4.5 million. Savings on project savings is essentially 2 million. Savings on COE, which is the largest proportion, is 30 million. And because I can't see the last, and then the last one is 35, just around about 35 million. What we have requested from Provincial Treasury was the reallocation of some of that budget towards new projects that we've identified that's urgent for COVID. And as the Minister said, one is that we have increased operations. So these are just essentially contingencies, which may arise because of COVID and allows us to respond really quickly. The second was the Occupational Health and Safety project. So this is really around how we are able to assign, so it's looking at occupational nurses and also occupational medical officers, that allows companies to be able to become safe and compliant with regards to the regulations. I think we're targeting about 600 companies to benefit from this in terms of one-on-one. And this is really around being safe. So businesses, if they aren't compliant, are shut down, and obviously impacts on them. Our entire initiative around the compliance with the safety regulations is to help business keep open and therefore keep the employees and their workers. And this is what this project is, by getting additional resources that allows us to have a much deeper support package and support to business. Then we have the Small, Medium, Micro Enterprises Relief and Recovery Fund. And as the description shows, is that it's providing working capital in form of a grant to SMEs that are operating or will be able to open after the easing of the lockdown. And 9 million has been assigned to that. And then, as the Minister explained, with George Airport, this is George is the third largest airport in South Africa with regards to business travel. And so therefore it's a very important component of the Western Cape economy. And also this is very much, to a certain extent, linked also to the Propala Total initiative of exploring for oil and gas. So it was really important for us to actually open George Airport, and the budget that's been assigned here allows for, between municipality of George as well as the Department of Health, a collaboration to get the necessary personnel to allow it to open, and that's really around screening a medical official. This basically shows Chair and honourable members the breakdown of how the regional budget looked at in terms of the main budget, and then how we managed to decrease it by 72 million. The additional funding that was asked, and I've just explained now in terms of the projects, the vitamins, which is the movement of money between the programs, to allow for the prioritization of some of the immediate projects, the adjustments, and then the final adjustment budgets. What follows now is essentially a breakdown of each of the programs, Chair. This is contained in the budget vote bill, but program 1 in terms of administration looked at essentially goods and services being cut, and that's catering, travel, etc., which generated a savings of 3.6 million rand. This is a further breakdown of how that was actually achieved. So as you can see, is that there's been, in terms of goods and services operational budgets, significant cuts that was originally made to the main budget and then to the adjusted budget. I'm not going to go through in this a great amount of detail. Integrated program 2 is integrated economic development services. We looked at the compensation of employees being cut by 7.2%, 7.2 million. Goods and services, a significant cut with regards to that, and then a massive increase in terms of transfers and subsidies, and this is particularly because it's orientated towards the support of SMEs during this COVID crisis. Then we have, this is a further breakdown of the operational costs, and simply just demonstrates how we manage in terms of the OPEX and goods and services to actually reduce the amount of money that was assigned. Trade and sector development looked at essentially total adjustment budget in terms was reduced by 22.9 million rand. And in terms of the operational budget was reduced by 167,000 rand. Program 4, as consumer protection, had very little budget in the first place, but nonetheless, in terms of the compensation as well as goods and services, because they spend quite a bit of time out in the trenches, if you like, going through to communities. So that meant that their ops budget could be reduced significantly, and then obviously the compensation. And as you can see, is that here, bulk of the budget has essentially come from the travel and subsistence allowances. Program 5 has basically seen, again, there has been quite a lot of vacancies that was expected to be filled this year. This has been obviously frozen. Goods and services also has been reduced, and then subsidies, and this really refers to the subsidy to Atlantis SEZ, which has been there's an aspect in Atlantis SEZ which has been postponed that allowed and delayed to allow for the reduction of 6.2 million rand, and then we have the total budget, which I cannot see. Sorry, Chair, just to know that the meeting now is the way that Teams, oh shoot. The way that Teams work is that you can't see the bottom corner, so I can't see as I go through. Program 2, this is basically how they managed to do the reduction in terms of the ops budget. I'm not going to go through that in a great amount of detail, but as you can see, it's been slashed by 2/3. Tourism and arts and entertainment. Here we basically looked at the reduction of 15 million, and that's primarily come through because of projects in Westgrove And again, they have done a total reorientation of how they've delivered their, very innovatively, Wesgro has found innovative ways to deliver, but obviously given COVID, a lot of the plans that Wesgro had to change because of tourism essentially being shut down and international travel not being allowed. And then this is a breakdown of this of the goods and services for Program 6. Program 7, skills development. There has been some reduction that has been obtained, but again, this has mainly been in compensation of employees, sorry. And then this is the breakdown of how they're managed. We have tried to preserve as much of the skills budget as possible, partly because this provides a bit of a soft, particularly around internships, ways and means for companies to retain and continue to employ people. So that is it in a summary, Chair. I also just wanted to say that the department and the officials have been extraordinary in their response to COVID and because of COVID. So a lot of our AVPs have not been reduced, and people are doing kind of their normal jobs and trying to do it, of course, in a very different way. But in addition, they're also trying to provide the response to COVID. And the department has basically focused on how we help business respond and be resilient in the face of COVID. So we have, as a department, provided quite a bit of advocacy around regulation. So we've been lobbied for specific economic activities to remain open, and in certain cases we've actually notched up quite a few successes. So for example, there was, if you remember correctly, in lockdown level 5, that alcohol wasn't allowed to be exported, and the ports wouldn't necessarily open for that. Through the efforts of the department, we successfully got that open, and also in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture, so that at least meant that production of exports could actually, the production of alcohol and the distribution of that to export markets could actually occur. We've also provided quite a lot of clarity on the regulations. So there's been enormous confusion as various regulations from national level has been released. And what we've done, what we had to do, and also with different interpretations of what those regulations meant. So we've spent an enormous amount of time just trying to find what that clarity is and communicate it through to businesses and sectors. We have done an extraordinary amount of effort was placed on promoting and supporting safety, and that was communicating with companies. Wesgro has been quite collaborative in our partnership in providing frequently asked questions, etc., etc. The department has provided safety kits, and we're rolling that out, and we're going to be accelerating that going forward. That allows particularly your small and informal businesses to be safe for themselves, as well as for their customers, as well as for their workers. Because if they're not, they get shut down, and all of those workers and their organizations are compromised. And then we've also provided advice around how companies can better adapt, and that's through our digital support programs. We have tech volunteers, we have webinars on how companies can digitize the benefits of it that allows them to stay operational. And then finally, we are starting to get ready for the post-COVID economic recovery phase. So we have figures on what we have actually done to date, but it's an ongoing process, and the department has been incredibly, I think, responsive and agile to developments that happen, and they happen fairly frequently given the different stages of lockdown and even the regulations within each of the phases of lockdown. Thank you very much, Chair. I will stop there.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Members, we're going to jump straight in, and I'm going to take the first 3 hands for questions. Honorable Makamba Bocha, welcome, and you'll be the first hand, and then Honorable Mvimbi, and then Honorable van der Westhuizen. Thank you. Honorable Makamba Bocha, you may go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and my apologies for logging in late. I had technical challenges. Thanks to Joanne for the presentation. I've got two questions. One question is on page 219, table 12.1 on program 6, tourism, arts and entertainment. I just want to, she mentioned a reduction of about 15 million rand cut from that particular aspect. So I just want to find out why so much cut in this particular program while the tourism and arts industry is currently struggling and taking a strain from the lockdown period. Doesn't this industry need more cash to cash stimulation to develop other innovative ways to sustain itself? Why so much cut instead of boosting it? And my second question is on page 221, pertaining to a whopping 2 million rand that is set aside for the screening of passengers at George Airport. So why is it so much money? Why is so much 2 million? What does this screening entail? Can the department explain to us why? Is there a justification for such amount of money to be put aside for screening at the airport? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi.
Thanks very much. Also, maybe like to welcome the presentation by the acting HOD, and also maybe just following up on what has been raised by the previous honorable on the issue of the George Airport. I thought that the airport will be the responsibility of AXA or even South African Airways for that matter, that might be taking the responsibility. So are we making now a donation of 2 million to AXA on this particular issue? So if I may just be clarified on that. Then also, Chairperson, I think I always maintain that, like even on previous discussion on the budget, that there's a difference between reprioritization plan and a recovery plan. Now, especially from this department that deals with the economics of the province, I will have because to me, as I said, the reprioritization plan is not a recovery plan. A recovery plan should be a plan that says that we've been faced and we've been exposed to this social and economic situation and challenges that we're not aware of, and some of them we were actually aware of. But then having been faced by this is the plan that we are actually coming up with in dealing with this thing. So I haven't really found that out, but maybe with a bit of a benefit of doubt, because the department has actually, and as it was presented by Treasury, that they are following a 3-phase process. The first phase will be the immediate, where they show us, then there will be the short term and the medium. I'm hoping then maybe when we deal with the short term, we will actually be having the actual recovery plan that says that economically how we are actually going to recover out of this. Now, maybe when we meet, because I believe that that plan is going to be in November now, maybe it will be good that by now, maybe the department should also start working on that. So some kind of a forecast as to how are we going to recover economically out of this. Now, when the Department of Treasury was making a presentation, it was mentioned that there is about 14 million rand that has been put aside for purposes of dealing with, of assisting SMMEs. But I think I have seen a different figure from the department now of 9 million. And then there was another one of 15.5 million. So it will be good that if maybe we can be explained as to whether which one is which really from then. And I still believe that is there no way that that amount can actually be increased, because if we can be able to give 2 million from one entity like the airport, and if you look at the scale and the number of our SMME, is basically goes into hundreds, if not thousands. And I don't think that 15 million to assist in that will actually assist. Now, the last concern I'm just having, just as we're finishing one of the slides which deals with economic planning, that it is indicated there that there's been a cut of close to 2/3. I think that's what the acting HOD mentioned. Can we really afford to actually, well, I believe the sector really, the component of economics and economic planning is the most important one that we are in at this juncture. Can we afford to even slash that down by about 2/3? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Mvimbi. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Honourable Chair, I'm referring to the 9 million set aside for support to small, medium and micro enterprises. Is this the same fund that should assist and for which, also known as the SMME Booster Fund, and for which applications closed on the 15th of July? And if so, is this 9 million nearly enough? What has been the response to that relief offered? Then secondly, Chair, and my apologies if that question was already asked by Honourable Kamba Botje, I lost connection for a while. The next one is, to what extent will this budget either hamper you or allow you to monitor, highlight and perhaps even intervene, even if only informally, in cases where service delivery of national government, provincial and local governments are hampering economic recovery? And I'm referring here to reports regarding delays at the Deeds Office in Cape Town, and perhaps also backlogs in the approval of plans at municipal planning departments caused by the interruption during particularly the first 5 weeks. But it also seems to me as if in many cases service departments are, now using COVID-19 as an excuse for poor service delivery. And I just believe that this department's got a facilitating role, or can play a facilitating role, to assist the economy by making sure that at least, government departments are not the problem. And I happen to see that some of the savings is at the red tape department, and I was just wondering whether you will still be able to assist people that experience delays. And then my last question, Chair, does this department under this budget still have an ability to lobby the central government to open up the Western Cape's economy, particularly sectors such as tourism, and would you perhaps be able to take the hand of the Department of Agriculture for future drought relief? Because, Chair, with my hat as chairperson of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, I can just say that, while in general agriculture has really been performing well, and I'm on record that I think agriculture will play a big role in pulling us through this crisis, there are many of our rural areas that are still very hard hit by the drought, and I'm concerned about the economies of places like Beaufort West and Matsikama and so on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. Minister and Acting HOD, I will allow you to direct who will be answering what or where. And then after that, and depending on time, I will allow for a second round of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to the Acting HOD for responses.
Sorry, Minister, I heard a voice. Hello?
Yes. Apologies, Minister, and apologies, Chairperson. I had raised my hand such that I've been having challenges with connectivity. So I want to check whether my hand, did you see my hand, and whether you have placed it in the second round deliberately, or what's the procedure? Because I've just been in and out, my connectivity has just been bad.
No problem, Honourable Nkondlo. I did see your hand. I did previously indicate I'm going to take the first three hands first, which was Honorable Makamba Bocha, Honorable Mvimbi, and Honorable van der Westhuizen. But for the next round, I'm going to put you first, Sommer, because even though Honorable Mvimbi's hand is still up, you haven't had a chance to ask a question yet.
No, thank you, Chairperson. I didn't get that. Apologies from my side.
No problem, Honorable Nkondlo. Minister, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to hand over to the acting HOD and the team for responses, and I may come in at the end.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Chair if Rashid and then also Rashid Tofi as well as Ilse van Schalkwyk answers the question around the big cut from the tourism marketing budget. So that's the first thing. And I'll also ask Rashid as well as John Peters to answer the question for George Airport, as well as for the issues around the lobbying to open up, because I think that there's quite a lot of lobbying and red tape that we've basically done to open up the economy from national. But let me just say that with regards to the George Airport, as I said earlier, it is the third biggest airport for business travel. If we did not open that up, it would have had quite a lot of consequences for that district. One, not only just the Garden Route district, but it also services obviously the other districts in the area, including Overberg. So that's the first thing. AXA is one of those organizations that have been incredibly severely affected because of the lockdown, because clearly there was no international travel. So their income has totally dried up, is my understanding. And they did not have sufficient contingency to allow for the costs of screening. And the cost of screening is essentially around medical personnel. So the amount of money, the 2 million, essentially buys 2 medical doctors as well as 2 nurses. And those costs are basically being supported by the Department of Health as well as by the municipality. If we had not given it that support, George Airport would have stayed closed. And I think that would have actually had severe knock-on effects for the actual districts that are serviced by the George Airport. So I think that was the logic that was affected. Indirectly and through the opening of the airport, we have supported a number of businesses in the locales that George Airport services. So that's the first thing. The second thing, an Honourable Mvimbi basically spoke about the difference between reprioritization and recovery. So yes, we understand it's not the same thing. We are currently in response mode to COVID, and the recovery is basically something that needs to be planned. So in the planning is what have we done in the 5 years that have just in February been agreed to and finalized, but also what do we still continue? What new do we have to do? What do we have to reprioritize? What additional things do we have to do to help stimulate the economy and also support those sectors and businesses that have been worst affected by COVID? So that we are busy with the plan currently, and we're hoping to finalize that for the November adjustments, and therefore we, at that particular point, we may ask for obviously additional funding from Provincial Treasury and from the decision makers in order to fund that recovery plan. So that was the one thing. I'm going to now ask Rashid to please respond to the issues of the tourism market. He may call for Ilse van Schalkwyk to basically add and support him, but to respond to particularly the tourism, perhaps add to the George Airport question, and then and also then talk to the SME Booster Fund, where he may ask John Peters or Joshua to help him respond. Oh, and the last issue that I want to also talk about was the economic planning. We cut by 2/3, but that was essentially operational budget. So if you looked at and we'll definitely share the PowerPoint presentation, but the operational expenditure is essentially around travel, internal costs, travel, stationery, etc., etc. So that has been cut by 2/3. And actually, if you look across the department, very similar things have been happening there, where most of those programs have been slashed by about 2/3 in order to generate the savings to give back for the reprioritization of COVID. Rashid, if I can ask you just to take over now, thanks.
Thank you, HOD, and Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. Thank you. My name is Rashid Tofi, and I'm the branch manager in the department, one of the branch managers. Firstly, to answer Member Makamba Bocha's question, Wesgro in the last year is a crucial part. For us, they are the delivery arm to market the economy. And what I wanted to stress is at the moment within Wesgro's budget of just over 100 million, about 8 million of that is their presence at international shows and traveling and so forth. So we really went through their budget with a fine-tooth comb, and I can confirm with you that no direct cuts to any of their marketing initiatives have been done. The cuts have predominantly been on their operational expenses, which have been curtailed by COVID-19. So they don't have to travel, they don't go on outward missions or take stands at international shows. The other important thing to note is that last year, in an effort to boost the economy, they had a substantial increase in budget. So the net effect is that next year, this financial year, there isn't actually a hard reduction on money spent on the economy. But I will ask Ilse to add, if she can, to that question, member. Member, on the George Airport, I just wanted to, this is for Member Mvimbi as well. If you recall, when we had a backlog of arrivals at the airport in Cape Town, we also stepped in as a department that really is able to act on these binding constraints as we do at the airport or at the port. So what we did with Home Affairs at the time was to add a little bit of funding to supplement what Home Affairs was doing, and we managed to reduce that delaying time. And George Airport is it's an artery through which funds, both investment and exports, flow. And so it's really important that 2 million rand might seem like we're contributing to AXA, but actually it's a 2 million rand injection in the arm of that very important district municipality. So I am going to ask Ilse to respond in detail to those two. And then, John, I will leave it entirely for you to differentiate between the SMME fund and the booster fund, which is in fact two different funds. So it's an additional injection into the SMME supports for Honourable Member van der Westhuizen. I just want, Joe, I thought I'd answer the one question from Honourable Member van der Westhuizen about our ability to lobby national government. With the help of Minister and Minister's support staff, I think we've proven in the last 3 or 4 months that we've had an incredible success rate of lobbying national government, whether it was tourism regs, regulations on opening up the economy. And so I'm pretty confident with the relationships that we've established, the kind of team that we've put together to work very closely, even with the legal departments of the department, even with SAPS. We've managed to really nudge a lot of regulations that otherwise would have been restrictive. I think this COVID-19 has shown our ability as a regional government to play quite an impactful role on regulations. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Ilse, our Chief Director in the department. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Rashid. Thank you, honourable members. Just in relation to answer the first question. So the budget cut for in terms of, if you refer to the slide that's on the screen with regards to transfers and subsidies, 5 million of that is in relation to the DMO, which is the tourism marketing arm of Wesgro, and the remaining 8 million of that and change is in relation to the transfer that it was a total of 13 million rand that was going to be transferred to City of Cape Town in relation to the tourism safety initiative. So what you're seeing there is a combination of both those amounts. What we've done with the City of Cape Town initiative, which was geared towards the tourism law enforcement unit, that's been cut back quite considerably to only be operational in our late summer season with a much smaller unit, which was the proposal we submitted for the 3-year agreement with City of Cape Town. So year 1 will look completely different, and that's just a practical implication with regards to having less international tourists in the country, or none. Currently there's no travel. And with regards to Wesgro, of that 5 million, that cut was mostly with regards to travel, certain projects that were just stopped or decreased in relation to just cutting back on their expenditure as much as possible. The majority of the Wesgro budget that was cut also, if you compare the DMO versus the Trade Invest, there was a much bigger cut from the Trade Invest side than the tourism side. In relation to, so I hope that answers that question. In relation to the fact that we need to invest into tourism, I absolutely couldn't agree more. It's a very tight environment. That's still one of the sectors that remains, that can't operate fully. And we're very concerned with regards to what's happening in the sector with regards to job losses, etc. And at least some domestic travel can happen. And that leads back into the question, Honourable Member, in relation to the AXA, the George Airport. So firstly, just to note that the responsibility with regards to screening sits squarely on Port Health's shoulders, mostly, but for international airports. So they provided the same service at the Cape Town Airport, PE Airport, Durban, and Oro Tambo, etc. But with regards to the regional airports, which is Kimberley, East London, and George, they did not provide the services. So we were approached by AXA to assist and try and liaise with National Department of Health, who deals with the Port Health Authority. And what they said they do not have the staff, they do not have the budget to provide additional service, which is outside of their mandate in terms of international airports. And then the negotiations started with AXA to try and see how we can assist. AXA was very firm with regards to their mandate. They really did provide quite an investment in terms of as much as possible because of their reduced income, just getting the airport opened in terms of the guidelines from Department of Transport. To mention that George Airport has on average, they see about 55,000 passengers that pass through that airport every month. Of that, 40% is business travelers, which are currently the travel that's allowed across borders. So that's quite a significant amount or number of people that travel that stays in the area they spend into the economy, which is desperately needed from a tourism perspective as well as an economic perspective. So the George Airport is very important with regards to our mobility network, as well as in terms of accessibility into that region. And it's therefore important that we want to prioritize the support. What this means is there'll be a tripartite agreement between ourselves, AXA, as well as our Provincial Department of Health, who's assisted in terms of the 2 secondary screeners, which has to be a health practitioner, as well as the district municipality, the Garden Route district, who supported in terms of the 2 screeners. So the funding arrangement would be between those members. Why the 2 million rand? It also needs to take into consideration we don't know the length of time that this additional service will need to be in place. So the cost would need to be to cover a specific period, but of course the agreements, etc., will be in place to monitor the monthly expenditure incurred, because they basically have to recruit additional staff from both sides to cover this cost. So from an economic perspective, from tourism as well as in terms of the regional economy, it's important that airport functions. And as both Rashid and Joe mentioned, that if that airport isn't open, and it wouldn't have been opened if we didn't step in from our side in terms of securing that economic infrastructure. So I hope that answers the questions. Thank you, Honourable Member. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. van Schalkwyk. Members, I'm going to allow for Honourable Nkondlo to now ask a question, and I'm going to ask that is then the last question, given our time constraints, as there's another meeting after us. I will keep my questions for a different platform and a different day. Mr. Tufi, did I forget a question?
Yes, Chairperson, just the question that we wanted to reply to about the SMME Booster Fund. I think our Chief Director, John Peters, should have a quick reply to Honourable Minister Honourable Van der Westhuizen, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and morning, Honourable Members. Yeah, just 2 parts to it then. The first one is that these funds that we're allocating additional is very much different to the Booster Fund. The Booster Fund closed last year. and we continue with that project. That project scheduled to run over 2 years. What we have done is that where beneficiaries have requested a change in the nature of the support, we've granted that. For example, we supported a childhood ECD center or ECD association that requested some funding to be diverted to support salaries, and that we agreed to. So what we're doing with the booster fund, wherever there's a request to make amendments, we would study it in terms of the original agreement and either agree to it or not agree to it. That's the booster fund, and that like I said, has been allocated for last year. Maybe just some background to how we've done SMME development this year. When COVID hit us, we looked at our entire budget, and we then started to reprioritize in terms of, I think, 2 parts. The one is almost the immediate response to save companies or save small businesses, and the other one is to see how we can actually take advantage of opportunities that have arisen. So I'm going to just rattle off some of the interventions that we've done, and noting that the 9 million that you see there is an additional amount that was given to us by Treasury when we went the last time to them. So this is what we've allocated purely in terms of SMME development. 2 million rand for what we call the EDP project, where it's basically a project that will support community kitchens, but our support would be to the SMMEs or the spaza shops that will be supplying these community kitchens, and that's an amount of 2 million rand. We've also got, and we're currently busy with CIFA, and we might have to go our own on this one, where we're trying to partner with them to do the spaza informal traders project to the value of 11 million rand. So that's an additional 11 million rand. Then also we've allocated, and that project has been released already. We've now started to elicit proposals to the value of 2 million rand, where we looked at small suppliers of cloth masks, of hand sanitizers, of hand sanitizer dispensers, and also small operators who do deep cleaning, okay, as part of the COVID response. In addition to that, we also have about 7 million rand allocated to the working capital fund. Okay, like I said, the other 9 million is an additional to this, which will look at your larger businesses across the various sectors, and that would be to keep them going or to take advantage of other opportunities. The other amount of a small amount of 1 million rand we've allocated, and we're finalizing that, where we're looking at proposals from support organizations or business chambers. Because just note that business chambers, especially the small business chambers, play an important role in the ecosystem in supporting SMMEs. So in total, the 9 million is not a real true reflection of what we spending on SMMEs. It's far more than that. And like I said, we've prioritized it in terms of the response to COVID, saving businesses and then saving jobs, but then also getting businesses back on track to take advantage of whatever opportunities there are. What was the other one? Yeah, I think I've covered that one. Maybe just to hand over to my colleague, Raven, who's gonna, I think there was a question about red tape. What has red tape been doing during this time?
Mr. Peters, I apologize for interrupting and for interrupting your colleague as well regarding the red tape. Given that I only have 8 minutes left before the next committee starts, and IT always has complications when 2 committees or 3 committees have to be on YouTube at the same time, I'm going to ask, is it possible for you to please put that in writing? Because I would like Honourable Nkondo to ask her last question, and the committee will also require time to still deal with its own administration.
Sure, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Nkondo, are you able to, within 2 minutes, put your question? I know it's very little time, but I would like to give you the opportunity to ask your question.
I'm not sure, Chair. I think you will have to make it a determination, because you see, this is the problem of how we engage with this within 1 hour. Because there are many questions, the department must also respond and the department must also present. So it leaves us with limited time. Maybe just make a decision, because I've got a couple of questions. So I do not want, to place you under pressure with the little time that you have of what happens with my questions.
Okay, Honorable Nkondlo, I think if you're able to finish your questions within 2 minutes, then I'm going to allow them. But if not, would you like to put your questions in writing?
Sure, Chair. I would do that. Allow me to put these questions, because I don't think I will have to cut other questions and then allow them to put actually follow up with putting them in writing. So let me quickly do that. The first question, I think, is to the Minister regarding economic recovery. I think the question I would have wanted to ask him is that with the lobbying, about opening the economy, what does that mean in essence, and what percentage, and I think I've raised this question earlier on, what percentage, in terms of the spending of the department has been allocated to this, whilst we understand that most of the money has gone on social relief. That is why I think I'm interested in some of the responses that were given by the department on the funding. I think for me is putting our money where our mouth is. What is the percentage that goes to economic activities in trying to open the economy as we are lobbying for that? I wanted to understand, I think I was partly answered, but maybe I will follow up the questions on the tourism law enforcement unit, that there is almost a 5 million to the city of Cape Town, because I'm interested on the logic thereof, and I was partly a little bit covered with the response around what happens now, because we currently under the lockdown do not have much tourists. My question is, what exactly is this 5 million going to be buying or given to city? What is the city going to be buying with this money? My question on COE is on 2 levels. What are these vacancies that have not been filled to date, and what is the implication of these vacancies to the current staffing, including the labor relations pressures or the pressures onto employees, who must then take up additional task because of some of the vacancies that have not been filled? What are also some of the measures that have been put in place, given that COVID is putting additional strain on people operating from home? What is the labor relations, a kind of measures that the department has put in place at this point? The last one, Chair, would be on the provincial spend, the total procurement. I'm not sure whether the department is able or has been tracking the total procurement of the various departments of the province, and whether they can be able to tell us what percentage thereof, in terms of procurement of goods and services, PPE being the major spend, but also in other things, which has actually adhered to the regulation of Treasury on local content and local sourcing. I'll stop there for now, and then I'll add the other questions in a written submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo, Minister and Acting HOD. If you could deal with those, and then I will put my questions into writing.
Thank you. I think in response to the first question, I mean, yes, when it comes to economic recovery, we have put in a significant, as you put it, lobbying effort with national government, with some success in particularly construction and the e-commerce sector, and then of course with George Airport. To the extent that it consumes resources, I mean, we have been able to do much of that with our existing capacity and existing resources. To the extent that that effort has consumed resources, it's consumed resources, for example, like the 2 million rand, which we have had to allocate in order to open up the George Airport.
Thank you. I think the rest is for the Acting HOD.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I think what we will try and do is respond and provide some of the information in writing, and particularly with regards to the provincial spend of the Western Cape government. and the percentage that goes to local. So we'll collaborate with the provincial treasury with regards to that, if you don't mind, so that we can get to the specifics. And similarly with the COE and the vacancy rate. So there has been considerations. A lot of this is possibly because we are looking at realigning and doing things smartly in going forward. So the recovery plan is not just simply about doing more or doing new things, but it's also about how we do things differently in a collaborative manner and also deliver transversely. So it's making the most efficient use of the current resources as possible, and that resources includes not just financial, but also human capacity. Obviously, in terms of labor relations, we will go through and make sure that our unions are on board and in the conversations as we try and determine the way forward. So it's just very high level, and we certainly will keep the committee briefed as we make progress and come to sort of some finality around the plans. With regards to the city and the tourism, so clearly the safety officers aren't currently required. We are basically trying to make some projections around when tourism may well reopen, and so that to a certain extent is a little bit of a contingency in case tourism does reopen once again. In the latter part, or certainly the beginning of next year, or the end of this calendar year. So, but we'll obviously reevaluate, particularly around the November adjustments, depending on how things are going. Honourable Member, Chair, can I ask if I could ask Helen just to respond very quickly with regards to the support, and that's particularly around the lobbying for the regulations, because it hasn't used any money. We've used capacity, human capacity, to leverage the partnerships, particularly with National, to open up various industries or to try and get relaxation on some of the regulations that have been issued by National. Do you mind if I could, and also Helen will respond to the support we're providing to the Department of Agriculture, particularly around the drought. So if it's possible, just get a minute for her to respond. Helen Davies.
I think the chair has. Okay, I see she's back. Ms. Davis, you can respond.
Thank you very much. So just on the question of drought relief, we have a water resilience program, and on that we work with a number of departments as well as with local and national government. There we're very much trying to support municipalities at looking at different decentralized options of water supplies to boost and build up the water sector. And to also look at improving the water efficiency of businesses. And that's all aimed at looking at a collective system where we have more water for both urban and agricultural use. So we include and we work with agriculture in a lot of those projects. And then just to touch on the issue of the deeds office, excuse me, there, because it's a branch of a national government department, we work closely with the Department of Labour and try to get them to support the deeds office. In this case, the direction of the deeds office to open or close their office when they've had positive cases or people that have been close contacts of positive cases, that direction's been given by the provincial COVID committee, provincial committee of the national department. So there we're working closely with the Department of Labour to help them better understand what's required in terms of workplace safety to ensure that those offices are safe, but to ensure that they're not closed down wholesale when there is an infection case. In terms of lobbying government on interpretation of regulations, so there, right through the crisis, we've worked collectively, DDAT, Westgrove, City of Cape Town, with various national departments and with SAPS to try and unlock certain restrictions on the economy and to also ensure that everyone's aligned in terms of what's regarded as being needed to close versus can open. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and thank you for my colleagues for assisting also when I got kicked off with my connectivity problems. Have all the questions now been answered, Honourable Mitchell?
All answered. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no problem. Members, I'm going to now excuse the committee and the committee, the officials and the minister. Thank you so much for being part of this meeting and for putting a presentation together, given that we are now on an adjustment budget and we don't usually receive presentations on these particular things. I'm going to excuse you now so that the members can continue with the deliberation of the vote. But before you go, apologies, I almost forgot. Are there any members from the public in this meeting who would like to ask a question? Going once, going twice. Okay. Members, thank you so much. Officials, Minister, you're excused.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. Members, I'm just going to request that you please just remain online. Okay. Members, I'm going to request that if you have any extra questions for the department, if we could please put those in writing. And then I would like to ask if we can please indicate how we would like to put our view on this particular vote. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Chair, I propose that we support the vote.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. Is there someone who would like to second Honourable van der Westhuizen? Honourable Mitchell, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I want to support Honourable van der Westhuizen's proposal that we support the vote.
Okay, Honourable Mitchell has supported Honourable van der Westhuizen's position. Honourable Nkondlo, I see your hand.
Chair, clearly, I think for me, the fact that we're still having to send questions actually would prove immature to support a vote whilst we still have information, because that's the purpose of the debate, is to get the information so that we satisfy ourselves. So as the ANC will register our minority view as per Rule 90 not to support at the vote.
Okay, the ANC has indicated they would like a minority view in terms of Rule 90 to not support. Honourable Mitchell, I see your hand.
Supported, Chair.
Just hang on, Honourable
Mvimbi. My apologies. I didn't lower my hand. I'll lower it now.
No problem. Honourable Mvimbi, thank you for your support. I always tease regarding the moral support. And the reason I tease for that is because, unfortunately, currently, for the voting purposes, I'm only going to be considering the permanent members' votes in terms of the rules. Honourable Makamba Bocha, are you still online?
Still
yes,
here,
no.
Chairperson.
Okay, no problem. Honourable Makamba Bocha, you're very quiet, that's why just checking if you're still here.
No, I'm here, Chair. I'm listening.
Okay, no problem. Okay, members, may I then read the report, because I would like to support Honourable van der Westhuizen and Honourable Mitchell second as well on the vote. Ms. Klutter, thank you. Let's then add paragraph 2 there where the position is not put in yet. Let us just quickly put the position in and the minority view with the wording of the standing rules. Ms. Klutter, there just make the N and the C capitals, and if I'm correct, the ANC indicated that they do not support the vote on this one. So you don't need to write the reserve their right to express. You can just say do not support. with the correct wording, obviously. Just between African National Congress and the word do, you can just take the and out. So then it will read, yeah, there we go. Okay, no problem. Members, are everyone happy with the report? Can I read it out? Okay.
Please do, for the record.
Perfect. Okay, members, the draft report of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism on Vote 12, Economic Development and Tourism in the Schedule to the Western Cape Adjustments Appropriation COVID-19 Bill B4 2020, dated 27 July 2020. The Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism reports that it has concluded its deliberations on Vote 12, Economic Development and Tourism, in the schedule to the Western Cape Adjustments Appropriation COVID-19 Bill B4 2020, referred to the committee in terms of Standing Rule 188, and that it supports the vote referred to it. Minority view in terms of Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress do not support the vote. Members, everyone happy?
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. And with that, the committee is then adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Voorzitter.
Thanks, Chairperson.